Welcome to In Focus with Eden Lane.
Tonight we make a special visit to the Tattered cover on Colfax. We were invited to a special reading and book signing by the humorous author Wade Rouse for his latest work, It's All Relative, a memoir of 2 families, 3 dogs, 34 holidays, and 50 boxes of wine. We settled in for our visit with this charming author before the event began. I'm awfully delighted to get a chance to visit you while you're here for your book signing at the Tattered cover on Colfax. For your latest book, this is yet another memoir. It's called It's All Relative, and tell me what the subtitle is.
The subtitle, very important. 2 families, 3 dogs, 34 holidays, and 50 boxes of wine. And I always say the 50 boxes of wine, because I grew up in a fried food and Franzia family, is very important to get anyone through the holidays.
You know, I've heard, or maybe I'm wrong, tell me if I'm not right, that the way that kind of wine is packaged in a box, it's vacuum sealed, it actually is better for the wine than a regular bottle.
I've heard that. I don't know taste-wise.
It could be a rationalization.
Exactly. I say anything you can buy in bulk for $6.99 isn't going to be that great, especially because my dad will tilt the box and then squeeze the bladder to get as much out. So I don't know. Maybe so.
It gets the job done anyway.
It does.
I also have to, before we get into the meat of your book, I love this cover. It looks like a cupcake until you really look at it. And I know sometimes writers have sort of a love-hate relationship with their cover. How did you feel about this cover?
I love this cover.
Oh, good.
And I'm so glad. I always wondered how they were going to sum up all of the holidays that I write about with a cover without being kind of singularly holiday specific. And I think this does it. And the designer I have at Random House did my last cover, and it was amazing too. So I think they hit it out of the park. As
I said, this is your 3rd memoir, right?
This is my 4th memoir.
4th memoir?
Yeah.
Well, I missed one then.
I'm cranking them out.
You're cranking them out. I know that you actually have a journalism background, and you also write fiction still, do you not? Or are you about to write fiction?
I do. I'm working on my first novel right now, and it's a mystery set in Palm Springs where we winter. So I'm excited. It's with my agent right now and an editor, so fingers are crossed that they'll love it.
So I have to ask you, you say you winter in Palm Springs, yet you holidayed in Sarasota. What's the difference between wintering somewhere and holiday?
There really is no difference, but now we chose Palm Springs because I wrote about Sarasota. No dissing of Sarasota, but it was a little too old for us.
Too old.
Yeah, we brought the demographic down about 50 years when we went there.
The structure of your book isn't like the calendar, at least it didn't seem to be, but it does sort of highlight specific holidays as a way to sort of tell your story. And you sneak little reviews in there every once in a while, little 1- or 2-liner reviews of pop culture.
Exactly. I'm a big pop culture king.
What was the theory behind this? Did it start off that way, or did you just start talking about your family? How did you begin this project?
I always say that I'm an inspiration writer. So I even if I'm working on one book, whatever I wake up and am inspired to write is what I put down. And I always believe, and I always urge other writers to do this as well, that if you're writing what inspires you at some point in your life, it's going to find its way into a book. And for me, I had always accumulated all of these stories about the holidays. In fact, one of the first one I wrote was about Easter with my father burying our Easter eggs, because he's an engineerological guy. And that kind of started 30 plus years or so ago, but that's what I do, and I always feel that they're going to end up in some place. And with this book, I really wanted to look at a family through its holiday traditions, because I think that sums all of us up so beautifully.
And you kind of sort of tackle 2 families with their holiday traditions, because we get to learn about your partner's holiday traditions as well.
Yeah.
Even in that same sort of Easter chapter, we see the contradiction of
I think the beauty of the book, too, is that one of the most difficult things to do is to blend families together at the holidays, because we all have, I always say, our jacked up traditions, like me and my marshmallows on the sweet potatoes. And when Gary's mother, didn't put them on, I kind of went insane and locked myself in a bathroom. But that's what I wanted to cover, was just how wonderful our holidays are, because we get to spend time together, but we often lose sight of that through gifts and the money that we spend, and we work so hard to make life perfect when it isn't, and that's what we should celebrate.
So is that the thought process that helped you start to connect all of these stories for this book?
It is. Actually, writing it for a long time, and a number of things kind of coalesced. I heard on NPR a couple of years ago that Americans spend, I think it was almost $1,100 a person on each other at Christmas. And I was like, my goodness, that's a lot of money. And my mother became ill at the time and with cancer. And when I was visiting her, she said to me, of all the things that you'll ever receive in your life, just this time together and the stories we share are the ones you'll treasure the most. Mm-hmm. So that's when it all kind of came together for me.
Everyone professes that sort of sentiment, but it's not everybody who gets the kind of reminder you got from your mom and from your dog and your partner and your partner's family. So is that the message of your book, really?
It is. I mean, for me, I think humor is what unites us all. So what I want to do is not preach at anybody or kind of finger wag, but I want them to laugh and then kind of get that surprise slap at the end of a lesson learned. Mm-hmm. I really think that's what separates me from a lot of humorists today, like David Sedaris or Augustin Burroughs. I'm often compared to kind of a male Erma Bombeck. And that's what I really, and she was one of my role models growing up, and that's what I aspire to be.
I love that comparison.
This humorist that writes about these minute moments in life, but really when you kind of put them all together, they put larger themes into focus, and that's what I try to accomplish.
Since this is your fourth memoir, and you seem to be a relatively young man, how do you have enough of a life to write 4 memoirs?
I think memoir is kind of a genre that kind of gets stereotyped a lot, that you just write about your life from beginning to end and that's it. But really it can cover any trajectory in your life whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So for instance, my first book, America's Boy, was about growing up gay in the Missouri Ozarks. My second book was about working at a private prep school and the lessons I learned from what I term the mean mommies. It's a lot about self-esteem. Mm-hmm. My third memoir was about leaving the city and moving to the woods of Michigan. So that's what I cover.
What prompted you to, after you had your early childhood in the Ozarks, that's pretty rustic.
It was, yeah.
And then living in the city, what prompted you to move to a rural area? Well, not really rural, you live in Saugatuck.
Yeah, we live about 10 minutes outside, which is much more rural than this beautiful resort town is, especially I always say in the winter when everybody leaves and it becomes this ghost town. So it's just me and camouflage.
So I'm only picturing all the wonderful shops open and you're there when they're all shuttered up.
Yeah, I always say, sweetie, come visit in February because it's a much different story. But I think my whole life I'd always been running from something rather than to something.
Really?
And I loved the beauty and simplicity of kind of smaller towns. Mm-hmm. I do still love the buzz of a city, but I set about rediscovering myself, and what I wanted to do was write and kind of follow my own passion. And I just think I became, like so many of us, saddled with fear. We're all kind of saddled with fear in our lives, and once I shrugged that off, everything kind of came together.
Was there a component of being settled now that you have your own little family that it was safe to move away from the buzz of the city?
I think that's a great point. Yeah, that has a lot to do with it. I found my partner. We've been together 15 years. We had 2 dogs, and we found a beautiful setting where I could be incredibly productive and we could be accepted. And I think that's what we all search for in life.
I love how we start to know what your family is like with Gary when you describe New Year's Eve.
Yeah, New Year's Eve was very difficult. It's one of those holidays that I always love to celebrate, and then when I met Gary, it kind of took on a different tone.
More settled, more personal.
More settled, more fall asleep while eating caramel corn and wake up at 2 a.m. But that's what life is about, is that evolution.
There was so much of this book that made me literally laugh out loud. And I know we use that expression a lot. Oh, it was laugh out loud funny. But I really, truly did laugh out loud. And it's funny you say that you're compared to Erma Bombeck, because her work did the same for me, even though I found her when I was really, really young. What is it about the kind of rhythms that you use that you know is going to get that reaction from your reader?
Humor, I think, is incredibly hard. Whether you're a writer or an actor, I think people think it comes off as easy when it takes a heck of a lot of effort. Because I always say, tell a joke to 30 people. 5 are going to laugh, 25 are going to think it's the stupidest joke they've ever heard. So what I do is I usually start out, my essays are very short, and they usually start 15 to 20 pages, and what I do is really spend a lot of time editing and honing those pages down to get it to 4 or 5 pages where every word counts, and the punchlines keep coming, and each sentence has an impact, and that's a difficult rhythm to achieve, but that's what I always try to do.
Is the rhythm part of your calculation, part of your craft, or is it just that's natural to you?
It comes natural because it's kind of the way I talk. It's my inner and outer voice, but it takes a lot of work because I like those jokes to come, I like those punchlines to come, but then I like kind of the punch in the gut with sentimentality to hit too, when you least expect it.
The first chapter that really did that to me, where I didn't see the sentiment coming, was the chapter in Sarasota. And that was, you sort of think, well, maybe this is going to be the moment where you touch on that sentiment. And then it's so funny, you forget that you thought this was going to be the moment. Was that also a device that you used?
It was. I'm a big admirer of some, like Erma Bombeck. David Sedaris does a wonderful job, I think, of leading you into a story and you don't know exactly where it's headed. It's like kind of going around here on a mountain path, and you kind of twist and turn and don't know where it's going to end. And I think, with writing about spring break and my spring breaks in my college years and us finally being able to get away on our own with our independent schedules, I kind of mourned a lot of my youth until we met this older couple who really taught me an incredible lesson on the importance of being together and to really treasure those moments. And that's what you're talking about, is that sentimentality which kind of comes out of nowhere.
We also see that in the way you talk about your mother, the way you talk about Gary and his family. There's that underlying sense of connectedness with the people in your life.
Yeah, I'm a real heart on my sleeve writer, which is sometimes difficult with critics. I think there's a lot of critics who expect you to be more cynical and more hard-edged, and I am. Believe me, I am. But
I don't believe you.
But I love that. I think it's okay to be soft and sensitive and to really show your emotions. I think we try too hard not to, and that's what I want to get people. I don't want there to be any shame or stigma with that.
Or sometimes writers try too hard to be clever.
Exactly.
That they're afraid to show that part?
Exactly. I think, and another thing I really think that sets me apart from memoirs today is that I don't try to be anything else other than who I am. I don't try to be heroic. I don't try to be a badass. I don't really try to brand myself in any other way than being a human. And what I do, you touched on this earlier with memoir, what I try to do is I think that we all have this invisible finish line in our future, and we're all trying to reach it. And one day we take 3 huge steps forward, the next day we take 2 giant steps back. And that's what I try to capture in these memoirs. I do well one day, and next day goes to holy hell. But that's natural. That's what we all do.
We've mentioned Gary more than once, so it's no secret if someone hasn't read your previous work that you're a gay couple. But I don't think this is a book that's aimed at a gay audience. I think this is just for readers who love to get to know people and learn about that connectivity. Is that something you had in mind when you were writing it, or were you specifically gearing it toward any kind of audience?
No, I never. I only write what inspires me, and I tell my story. And I love that you say that, because I don't like authors to be pigeonholed. I hate when women writers write truly beautiful love stories and they're called chick lit. Well, they're women writing novels. That's kind of looking down at what they're attempting to do. And I think that's what happens when someone's termed a gay author too. Well, you're gay and you're an author, but what I try to do is write these universal stories from my own unique viewpoint. And I think that they touch on themes that everybody can relate to, especially women and mothers.
I think it's tempting for some people who are trying to be progressive about your book to say, well, the fact that you're in a gay relationship is irrelevant, and I think it's absolutely relevant, but it's not the point, because when you described Ira and Dottie, that's the same kind of couple that you're describing you and Gary as.
Exactly.
And the parents, all of that.
Exactly. I mean, any relationship has role models. And I look at my family, Gary's family, our parents, our grandparents were all married 50 plus years. Mm-hmm. So as a couple, no matter gay or straight, that's who you model your relationships after. And that's what we aspire to be. And that's what I hope I'm kind of leading readers through in my books.
I know that you also teach writing for younger authors or authors who are branching out into new, and you have a workshop coming up in your own town, right?
Yeah, in Saugatuck, Michigan in May. And one of the things that I learned is when I first started, I reached out to authors I admired for advice, and I got 0 responses. And instead of letting that kind of submarine my aspirations, it really lifted me up. And I thought,
really, how did you do that?
I really thought if I had any level of success, I would try to give back to other writers, just at least to let them know there's a reason you're writing. Writers need to know it's okay to write. We all think that it's silly or it's not okay, or there's all of this
editor in the back of your head.
And there's this stigma related to it still that, and writers think they won't be successful. And so I try to have them all get past this fear in their lives. What holds us back? And I think that also holds back a writer's voice. So I love doing them.
How do you measure being a successful writer? Is it book sales? Is it letters from your readers? Is it actually writing that day? How is it that you measure being successful?
And all of those. That's a great question. In all of those ways, because for me, waking up early and writing and I get 5 or 6 hours in, I'm a success that day. I know when everything's flowing that I've really hit it out of the park. But, I call publishing BART. It's part business and part art. So if you don't think publishers looking at your profit and loss statement and how well you're doing, to be successful on that level, you do have to sell books and you do have to build your platform, and that's an important part of it today. So all of those things kind of measure into being a success. For me, it's the fact that I'm a full-time writer now. I have another book coming out in September. I hope
that's a compilation, right?
Yeah, it's a dog anthology, humorous dog anthology called I'm Not the Biggest Bitch in This Relationship. And 21 great authors.
Is that the final cover that you show on your?
Yeah.
I love that cover.
And Chelsea Handler's dog wrote the foreword. So we're excited about that, and part of the proceeds go to the Humane Society. So it's a win-win, I think.
Have you been with the same publisher for all 4 of your books?
No, I was with Penguin to start, and then I went to Random House and have been there ever since. Although, ironically, Penguin is publishing the dog anthology. So,
it's a full circle moment.
It is. It's, publishing's large, but it's also really intimate. You kind of get to know everybody after a few years.
And your books are typically available as ebooks as well,
Yes,
are they not?
They are. All are available as ebooks. Either, Kindle, Nook, or independent bookstores are doing Google Books now, which is great.
Do you read ebooks?
I don't yet. For me, I have to separate myself from a laptop or a computer or my iPhone, and the only way to do that is pick up a good old-fashioned book and get immersed into it, because if not, I'm going to be doing something else, and I don't want that. I want to take a step back and just be with that story.
While I do read more than a fair amount on my iPad and the Kindle app and the Nook app, all of those, there is something different about cracking that spine open, and you feel like it's almost like reaching the top of a roller coaster, that because you're about to begin that adventure with that story.
It's a great analogy, and touching that paper. Although I have to say, with ebooks today, I'm reaching a whole new audience of younger readers who are discovering me and can easily download that book and respond. And so that's opening up new worlds too. So it's depends on who you are. I'm sure I'm going to get one. I'm sure at Christmas and Gary's mother will shove one in my stocking or whatever.
So what do you hear from your readers? Since you have, you say you're starting to hear from younger readers, who is your typical reader that you've been hearing from?
My typical reader, I would say, is a mother, probably in her 30s or 40s.
We don't have to say that part.
I know. Mothers everywhere are slapping me. But I do. I think that's really kind of my audience. But I think I have a lot of gay readers. And I've had number of older readers and very young readers too. A lot of high school, my books are in a lot of high school and college libraries. So that's starting to grow as well. So I think it's a good diverse group.
Do you hear from teens?
I do. My first book is a must-read for PFLAG, and it's in a
That's parents, friends, and family of lesbians and gays,
yes.
right? Did I get it right?
You did,
Okay.
and it's in libraries everywhere. So it's become a required read for a lot of gay teens. So that means a lot to me. But there's a lot of younger readers. College kids and younger people love humor, so I think they're really connecting with that aspect of it too.
Because PFLAG has you on a must-read list, and we just finished a year where we know that there was a huge national focus on LGBT teens in particular, but just teens in general with bullying. Is the humorous nature of your first book, for example, is that something that you're hearing from those particular readers about?
Yeah, very much so. I think that, I think with a great memoir, you're always going to tell a difficult story, but I think you don't want to wallow in that pain or the sadness too much. I think readers...
I've read those books.
Yeah, readers I think get kind of... That's tragic, but they kind of get tired of that tragedy, so humor lifts you out of that. I think that's what people relate to. It's interesting, too, because you were talking about, being a gay author, and I just got a letter from a Mormon in Salt Lake City, a guy who picked up my husband, who started to read my third memoir, at least in the city, Someone Would Hear Me Scream, and said to me, I didn't realize what I was getting into. And I asked my wife if I should continue, and he goes, it is the best book I've ever read, and an author has never connected to me so much in my life. And I mean, that's impactful. That's why once you break down those stereotypes and boundaries, that's what books do. I mean, they connect to everyone.
That would be a great blurb, too.
It would, wouldn't it?
Speaking of blurbs, obviously that's where I'm going to take us next, is we get to hear the story of you seeking blurbs from other writers when you were a younger writer, or even now. And you also posted some of that on your blog.
Yeah.
And you teach writing, so have you been asked to blurb?
I am. I'm asked to blurb a lot now, which is a bizarre after I make fun of getting blurbs. I don't know. Blurbing is such a bizarre, incestuous rite of passage. I mean, publishers require you to have quotes from other writers, respected writers.
That's that business part of Blurbs there.
Exactly. But a lot of them hate giving them. I mean, I got, whitewashed by 3 that I talk about in the book.
We won't mention their names now, but you can grab this book and
Yeah.
find out who it is.
But I get asked to blurb a lot, it's an honor, but it's interesting too because my required reading now is kind of work related. So I'm getting sent all of these advanced readers copies to blurb, and it's an honor, but you kind of get pulled away from your regular
writing.
reading. Yeah, and writing too.
Have you read something recently that you were invited to blurb that you were just so excited that you really were enthusiastic about blurbing?
I was. There's actually a book that just came out by a plastic surgeon from Michigan, and it's called In Stitches, and the author's name is Dr. Tony Yoon, and he is a regular on Rachel Ray.
Oh.
And he wrote about this pressure growing up Asian American in a small town, and his father was a doctor, the pressure to be perfect. But he takes you through med school, and it's a really honest blow-by-blow look at why he chose the medical profession, of what kind of doctor he wanted to be. And it's funny as hell, and it's just, was one of the most interesting books I'd read in a long time. So yeah, there are great gems that you find.
It sounds like whoever invited you to blurb that knew that it was a good companion to the kind of work that you do.
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's the whole goal. That's the beauty of blurbing. That's what you want.
So are we in the middle of your book tour now? Is this the beginning, the end?
We call this the second leg. I did the first leg in February when the book came out, and I called that Blizzard Charlie Sheen tour because the blizzard that went through the Midwest wrecked a lot of lives, a lot of white powder flying around. And it was, this is the second.
And that wasn't just Charlie Sheen's dressing room.
That's true. And so that took me through about 14 cities, I think. So this is the second leg, and we're in Albuquerque last night, Denver, and we go to Kansas City tomorrow. And then I do northern Michigan, the resort towns, at the end of the month. So it's great.
And we know that your anthology is done and ready to come out soon?
It's done, yeah. We're just in copy edits right now, and it comes out September 6th, so it's going to be a great book.
So how are you doing any writing while you're on the road?
I've been that's my hardest thing, is when I tour, I get kind of out of that flow of writing, because I'm very much a get up at 6, write till noon person with nothing interrupting the day.
Can't do that at the airport.
No, you can't do it at the airport. It's hard to do driving. And I like to be fully caffeinated, and I like to be rested. So that's kind of out. But I get back, and I'll be cranking it out this summer.
Well, I can't wait to hear what you have next. I want to see your anthology. And this book really made me laugh so much. I know that our viewers are going to enjoy your work. Thank you for making time to talk to me today.
Thank you for having me. It was nice to meet you.
During the reading, there were many laughs and more than a few touching moments. And after, he had a chance to meet with his readers and sign their books. Like so many of the best authors, he has a strong and close relationship with his readers. It was a pleasure to share this fun evening at the Tattered cover. And you can visit Wade's website for more information about his latest book or his upcoming events.
That's all for this edition. Remember to join us on Facebook and Twitter. With all that Colorado has to offer, we're here to help you keep it in focus. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Snugglebug.